Rafael Nadal is undoubtedly one of the greatest tennis players in history. Throughout his career, he has shown more than once that he's a true warrior and has battled through numerous injuries, always finding a way to come back and keep winning. However, the Spaniard's last few months have been really concerning, with one question echoing louder and louder in the tennis world. Is Rafael Nadal over? In all honesty, this is not the first time this question has been asked. Rafael Nadal's tennis career has had many ups and downs. While he has always demonstrated his enormous talent, relentless ferocity, and hunger for glory on the court, he has often struggled with irregularity and injuries of all kinds.
And recently returning from the rib injury, but if it is the foot, it's a serious question.
This debate about the end of Nadal's career came up a lot over the years, but in 2021 seemed like a reality for many. After a successful 2020 season, the Spaniard struggled the following year, winning only 2 titles and missing almost the second half of the season. After the 2021 French Open, where he was defeated by Djokovic, Nadal only played the City Open in Washington during the first week of August due to a complicated foot injury. At the time, many specialists predicted the end of Rafael Nadal, anticipating a near retirement or, at the very least, removing his name from the race for major titles. The thought was far from illogical. Rafa was 35 years old at the time, and his body had withstood and overcome more injuries than probably any other player in history. Added to that were Djokovic's dominance and the rise of a new generation of players. By the end of 2021, Nadal seemed done. Yet the Spaniard still had plenty of gas left in the tank, as he emphatically demonstrated in the first half of the following year. During the beginning of the 2022 season, these comments about the end of his career must have reached Nadal's ears, who responded categorically in the first major of the year.
Rafael Nadal!
While Rafa was not the title favourite, largely because the Australian Open had proved to be the most elusive Grand Slam for him, Nadal showed he was far from finished and took the tournament after a thrilling final against Russia's Daniil Medvedev. With that title, Rafael Nadal became the first male tennis player to reach 21 slams in singles. But that's not all. 2022 became the best start to a season for the Spaniard, who won his first 20 matches, including 3 titles. Although he did not have his best clay court campaign, Nadal also managed to win the French Open for the 14th time. This was his 22nd Grand Slam title, and at the time, he looked like the main GOAT title contender. But then it all fell apart in the second part of the year. After winning the first 2 slams of the year and reaching the Wimbledon semi-final in his first appearance in 3 years, everything seemed to be going well for Rafa, and some fans even claimed that he was on course to become the first man since Rod Laver to win the Grand Slam. Unfortunately, everything collapsed. Nadal had to pull out of his semi-final match against Nick Kyrgios after an abdominal injury that worsened in his quarter-final match.
Confirmed, I have a tear in the muscle, in the abdominal.
Since then, Nadal has been absolutely unrecognizable. He managed to overcome that serious injury, but it definitely seems to have taken its toll. The rest of the Spaniard's season has been really tough, losing in the first round of the Cincinnati and Paris Masters, in the 4th round of the US Open, and in the ATP Finals round robins, where he only managed to win 1 match. These are not only poor results by the standards of a player of Nadal's quality, but even his fighting spirit seems to have dampened. He has lost to players who previously could not have touched him. For the past few months, Rafa has seemed like a shell of himself, a vague ghost of the real Nadal. Even in his post-defeat conferences, Nadal has looked more beaten than usual, more subdued and resigned, as if his fighting spirit has disappeared.
I played a terrible game there, so yeah, I didn't deserve the victory playing that bad.
While his injury and the inactivity resulting from it may explain Rafa's downturn, 2 personal events may also help explain this critical moment in his career. Let's start with Roger Federer's surprise announcement and subsequent retirement at the Laver Cup were undoubtedly one of the most emotional highlights in the tennis world during 2022. The Swiss played his last match in the competition that he himself created in doubles, along with none other than his greatest rival, Rafael Nadal.
Please welcome Roger Federer and Rafael Nadal with captain
After losing that last doubles match, Federer and Nadal were very emotional, both completely moved to tears, in an image that shocked and moved pretty much everyone in the sports world. While Nadal was clearly shaken by the departure of his great rival and friend, he later admitted that the whole event was very difficult for him.
Most important player in my tennis career is leaving,
As it was like seeing his near future reflected in Rogers. Of course, Rafa always knew that his career would end one day or another, and he admitted several times that he knows that he is fortunate to be still playing tennis after so many injuries.
I feel lucky just playing tennis. I am playing with, I think, a great attitude, positive.
And yet, somehow Federer's retirement made him glimpse that future moment, grasp what he will experience then, and recognize that it is closer than he would like to believe. Nadal has already seen so many of his peers and great rivals retire, and he knows he could be the next one. Still, Rogers' retirement hasn't been the greatest turbulency in Rafa's private life during the last few months. In fact, it has been some wonderful news that has kept Nadal's head away from the court, as he and his wife have become On 8 October 2022, almost 3 years after getting married, Rafael Nadal and his wife Maria Francisca Perello became parents for the very first time to a baby boy they named Rafael. Of course, becoming a father, especially for the first time, changes anyone's life, and Nadal was no exception. Rafa dropped out of tournaments around that time and only went to the first part of the Laver Cup weeks before, only because it was Federer's retirement. Even when he returned to the circuit, Nadal admitted that he found it difficult to do so, and to concentrate on matches after the arrival of his firstborn.
Leave your son at home and not be able to see him, it's something quite.
It is logical that given the birth and the first weeks of his son, tennis has taken a backseat in Rafa Nadal's head, and that may explain his poor results in the second half of 2022. However, things did not improve in this new year. In fact, they only got worse. Just as in 2021, Rafael Nadal ended the year 2022 with speculation about his future in tennis. However, unlike last year when he was able to completely quell the rumours by winning the Australian Open, 2023 could not have started any worse. His participation in the Australian Major not only didn't quell the rumours about his near end, but it further fueled them. Nadal couldn't defend his crown as he lost in the second round to the young American player Mackenzie McDonald. Even more painful than his defeat was his expression of sorrow while walking off the court and his subsequent press conference.
Can't say that I am not destroyed mentally at this time because I will be lying.
In it, Nadal looked utterly defeated and resigned, probably more than ever. He even unintentionally expressed huge doubts about his future. His statements generated so many reactions that recently his uncle and former coach, Tony Nadal, had to come out and talk about his nephew's future. Tony clarified that Rafa was not yet in the mood to retire and that he wanted to continue playing, but that currently he was depending on his body to continue doing so. After everything that went on in Australia and considering the last few months of Nadal's career, one question resonates louder than ever before. While it is impossible to answer such a question with certainty, an analysis of the situation in which the Spaniard currently finds himself may bring us closer to an answer. Clearly, Nadal has not been able to find his best level in recent months, mainly due to various injuries that have plagued him. The lack of competition due to these injuries and the birth of his son has taken away his rhythm, and that could be seen in all his matches since his withdrawal at Wimbledon. At the same time, all this and the same doubts about his retirement have dented Nadal's confidence. A player who has always depended on his mentality to crush his rivals and who now feels weaker than ever. For the time being, the next step for Nadal, as he himself has acknowledged, is to recover fully from his injuries and get back into the rhythm of competition. However, even if he manages to do that, it remains to be seen how his body reacts to the physical demands. Nadal is no longer a young man, and his body has taken more punishment than the vast majority of tennis players in history. Simultaneously, if he makes a full recovery, it remains to be seen whether he can regain his mentality and his killer instinct. It is clear that, at least since Federer's farewell, Nadal is mulling over his own retirement, which seems increasingly closer. The birth of his son is not a minor factor either, as it could change the order of Rafa's priorities. Finally, and most importantly, it remains to be seen whether Nadal truly decides that it is worth the sacrifice to continue competing, or whether he finally decides to call it a day. At this point, it seems that Rafa still believes he has more to give, so he will try for another comeback, but there's no way of knowing how he'll react if there's another big step back. So, what is the answer to the question? Well, sorry to disappoint you, but it is still too early to say. Only time will tell for sure. We will have to wait and see what 2023 has in store for the Spaniard. In my opinion, it will depend a lot on how Nadal responds physically and mentally to the upcoming challenges. I think that if he has the same problems in the following tournaments he enters, he will gradually come to terms with the idea of retiring, and perhaps not too long from now, he will do so. However, one should never discount a true warrior like him. Besides, the clay court season is getting closer and closer, and we all know how Nadal usually gets in beast mode during those weeks. So maybe, yet again, Rafa manages to pull off an incredible comeback. One can at least hope, right? But now it's your turn. What do you think? Can Rafa make another successful comeback, or is he done for good? If you want to know what the legends think of Rafael Nadal, don't miss our video on the subject.